Hello, this is Eats Everything, and this is a walkthrough of my track, We Lost Ourselves and Found a Family, featuring the man himself, Goldie, which is on my album of the same name, which is out now. I'm going to walk you through how I made it and what I did, etc. Excuse the, I'm not going to say shitty, excuse the substandard sound card. My Apollo X6 blew up 2 days ago, and I bought this thing, and I got to say, this little SSL thing is really good. So I don't always, this isn't my normal setup, but yeah, I'm going to walk you through it. Let's go. So I always start, all my tunes generally start with drums, unless I've got an idea in my head, then they'll generally start with drums. So I would have, I think, I can't really remember, but I'm guessing the drums were from, I use, when I'm doing tunes with breakbeats in, I generally tend to use Stylus RMX quite a lot, because it's got good sounds, good quality sounds, and it's obviously easily manipulatable because it's all in that Dr. Rex format, so it slices up all the MIDI. So what I generally tend to do is build a loop in, or go through the loops, fanny about with the loops in Stylus RMX, and then bounce each individual part, like copy over a few different selections of Stylus RMX. This is obviously after, this is the after effect, because I don't have any of the Stylus RMXs up, but what I will do is then bounce out different instances, the kick, snare, etc., and then have it all layered up. So the drum, so this is the kick drum, and then the snares were a double snare. So I layered one snare here, which is just this little sort of a bit punchy, and then much more garagey with a bit more low end, and then just on this snare group, I haven't really done a lot. I use Clev Grand reamp, which I think is really fucking wicked bit of kit, and you can add harmonics and distortion or whatever to, you know, the lows, low mid, high mid, treble, etc. And then yeah, so double those snares up, then the kick, and then what I would have done here with these loops. These were again in Stylus RMX. And then I would have chopped them around, moved them about everywhere, done like little different bits of effects on them and whatnot, and then bounced it out as one. If I get a loop that I really like, that's one solid loop, which I can just tweak a little bit, then I'll just bounce it out as one. I don't use loops all that often, but sometimes with this kind of track, it just seemed to work. And then if we push it on a bit further, actually, because this is where the full loop is. Again, this is a hat from Stylus RMX. I've used Shaper Box on there, so you don't have to fucking bother with Shaper Box is like well, it does loads and loads of stuff, but it's really simple. If you want to sidechain stuff, you can obviously, it saves setting up a track with, you know, individual hits that you have silently, and then, you know, so instead of having to set up a sidechain and then a compressor, you can just cheat and use Shaper Box, which it is a bit of a cop out. But fuck it, like, as I've said many times, I don't really know what I'm doing. It's trial and error, and as things go on, I sort of work it out as I go along and get better and better each time. I have like a folder of favourite plugins that I use that I've got, and as I find new ones, I add to it, so I know where everything is, so I can go to it. So I always, on drum groups and stuff, I always use this knock plugin. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's just fucking gives a bit of, if you take knock and IM pusher off of it, so IM pusher looks like this. What I love about these is you find out the key of your track, and then you can enhance the low end to just give it a bit of boost, and you can play with the dynamic punch and the mid-range on this one. They're similar, but they do a different job in terms of sound. So you hear it before, then pusher just gives it a bit of girth, and then knock again just adds a little bit, put a tiny little bit of air in there, saturate it a bit more punch, turn it up a bit. But then I always do the gain match so that it's not going wildly out of sync and out of basically going mental. Little bit of what have I got on here? It's so long ago since I made this tune. Again, Isotope Trash just gives it a little fucking horrible, a little bit of horribleness to the sound. Again, if we take everything off it, mad how much difference it makes. So turn these on. What's this? The M12 filter here, which is Arturia thing, which is pretty handy, man. I don't use it a lot because it's a bit of a faff, but all of these together make it quite a sort of, gets a bit of grime, a bit of punch to it, and that's how I made the drums. When I had the idea for the album and I was going through it and sort of, the album is like a homage, I hate that word. It's a whistle-stop tour, shall we say, of my journey through dance music. I make and play a lot of different styles, and I have done over the years. I've always tried to sort of be quite varied in what I do and what I play and what I make. And when I've written the drums for this track, I messaged Goldie on WhatsApp and I said, look, would you be cool to be on my album? And he called me. It was about 6:10 on like a Wednesday school day morning, and he called me. And when Goldie calls, you kind of answer, because Goldie's, you know, he's Goldie and he's a legend and he's a lovely guy. And I called and he answered, right, I want you to tell me what the premise of the album is. I don't just want to be on any old shit. It's got to be fucking right. It's got to have a story. It's got to have something about it. I'm not just going to give my voice or be a part of it if it's not any good. Da, 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 da. So I was like, okay. So I told him all about the album, the premise, about it being a walkthrough. It's going to be genre bending, you know, going over all different kinds of styles of music: house, techno, garage, drum and bass, break, boogie, the whole shebang. And he was like, fuck yeah, I'm into this. I'm up for it. I said, look, I just want you to sort of talk about, you know, what it was like back in the early 90s for you, and like what your experience of raves was, because you were one of the originators of jungle and rave music in general. And so within the next hour, he sent me about fucking 15 voice notes, like saying loads of poignant, you know, things about rave culture and like what raving meant to him and stuff like that. And what came back of all the ones he sent, this is the one that I ended up going with, which is pretty fucking cool.
Rock and roll is dead, and the idea of a DJ playing music that he was a part of is the one. It was something so fucking special. A lot of people couldn't get their heads around it. They couldn't understand it. It was the wild style of our lives, man. The heartbeat that we all believed in. Raving hard in the 90s was about losing your fucking car keys, trying to work out where your car was with no top on in the middle of a muddy field. That was raving hard. So many of us did, in so many ways. We lost ourselves and the family.
So that's what he said. I had to chop it and move it around a little bit. And the album name, once he sent me that and I'd done it, once I'd started using it, I was like, fuck, that's the album name right there. We lost ourselves and found a family. It encapsulates what I'm trying to do perfectly. But the first recording he did was, he was like on a fucking bus or on a train or walking outside. So there's loads of wind and background noise. So I was like for months and months saying, can you please re-record it? Could you re-record it? And obviously he's a busy guy. And he was like, nah, I like it. I like the fucking griminess. I like the rawness of it. I was like, yeah, but you're Goldie, you're on my album. I want to celebrate and I want you to be audible. I want to be able to hear everything you say. So eventually he came back and recorded it, but he didn't say we lost ourselves and found a family. So I had to fucking piece together from what he said from the old one.
In so many ways, we lost ourselves and the family.
So I had to then get the found from the original recording. Oh, I forgot to solo the one that you can actually hear. So I had to piece them together so that it was audible.
In so many ways, we lost ourselves and the family.
You can hear there's a difference, but in the tune you can't really. And then obviously it's a fucking WhatsApp voice note, so there's not, the quality's not great. So use the isotope vocal synth on it. I love this distortion thing, a little bit of mix on the vocoder, just a little bit, not too much. I'll solo it with just the vocal synth and nothing else for now. Take the EQ off, take the utility off, and the de-esser.
In so many ways, we lost ourselves and the family. In so many ways.
You can hear the difference big time when the found comes in, but then I use this JJP thing a lot for tidying up and making vocals cleaner, and this will be the thing that...
So many ways. We lost ourselves, the family.
And then a bit of EQ, utility, just to make sure it's properly mono, and then...
So many ways. We lost ourselves, the family.
You can really hear when it's soloed how different it is, but in a tune you can't tell. It's fucking... And at the end of the day, after him re-recording it for me once, reluctantly, nicely, very nicely, big up Goldie, but reluctantly, because he's like, mate, I like it the way it is, I like it the way it is. I couldn't then ask him again, mate, sorry, you haven't fucking said the fucking tagline of the album, mate. And incidentally, although I told him a few times that he'd basically inadvertently named the album, he still didn't know. And on the day of the release day, I was on the way back on the train, and he sent me this voice note.
Quite insane that you named the album from the line of my dialogue, which is pretty fucking good. I've just realised, because I'm looking at it going, every record can't be called the same thing. And he says, we lost the... Was it? It was very good. I found a family. Is that the name of the project? And a family. It's a fucking great title. So you owe me one. You definitely do owe me one big time.
I owe you one, mate. So yeah, that's how the vocal and how the bits with Goldie came about. I use Pigments, Arturia Pigments a lot. I think it's a fucking amazing soft synth. I used to have loads of gear and outboard gear and like all kinds of stuff in here. And then during COVID, when this studio closed down, because I'm in a studio sort of in a place called Barton Hill in Bristol, which is miles away from my house. And when the studio closed down, because everywhere had to close, I took my speakers and my laptop, a 303, and the MIDI keyboard here, and a couple of other things home, but not a lot, and just set them up in a room. And then basically, so I didn't have any outboard gear, and I just started making music in the box, which is how I learned how to make music, late 90s, early 2000s. It's how I learned to make music, just in the box. And I found my productivity, like the amount of tunes I was making, went fucking through the roof. That's when I decided to start making an album, because I'd made so many tunes during lockdown. And when I came back to the studio and had all the, I had fucking Prophet 5 and Sub 37 and a Moog Voyager, loads of other synths, and loads of like pedals like Roland Demora pedal, Strymon El Capistan, loads of different pedals, and I used to run everything through it. And these compressors were always on and running things through them. And whilst, it sounds amazing, I found myself just basically not using any of it, because I'd gone back to how I started. And I guess there's no right or wrong way, and it's obviously purists out there will say, well, you should always be using outboard synths and whatnot, but I find it much easier and much more productive to make music in the computer. I would spend hours and hours noodling about on all my gear and actually not making any tunes, just making loads and loads of things and then wanting to tweak it and change it and printing it and never actually making music. So this way I've actually been able to make loads more music going back to how I started. So I digressed, and Pigments for me is the best. For me, it's the best soft synth you can get, because it's so versatile. It's so fucking so like you can do so much with so many different sounds. Like the bass is amazing on it. It's really easy to use, and the fact you've got grain table and sample, and obviously you've got analog as well, so you can mix up. You can have 3 oscillators all doing different things, and it's just fucking easy and it's fun, and you can get things going really quickly. And for the chords, I used Pigments, but I didn't fuck about with too much with. I just literally played this sort of off-key chord. And then instead of doing any pitch bend stuff in Pigments, because at the time I didn't really realise I wanted to do pitch bend stuff, I just manipulated it afterwards in the audio. So that's why you hear it rising up and down. I've just fucked about with it. And then this one, it's the same thing, just pitched up an octave. So it just adds a layer to it. And to get that kind of weird bit going on, I use this portal thing, output portal, which I think's fucking great. If you hear it without it, I'll take all the processing off. And then put, no, Black Box. Black Box is something I use all the fucking time. I think it's an amazing bit of kit. It adds analog warmth to things and just makes things, bangs them in there and keeps them from, I don't know the fucking terminology and all that bollocks, but it bangs them in there and it keeps it fucking, it just makes it tighter, brighter, and just gives it something that you don't have without it. So added the Black Box, so you can hear the difference. Just a really nice brightness, but not too harsh. And then this little micro filter here, fab filter, micro filter. Then wider, which is a fucking amazing width plugin for free. I've gone 200% wideness, which is, you know, some people might not like it, but fuck it, it sounded good. And then Portal is the one that adds that real messy. And then you can fuck about like with this orb thing. And obviously you can go full mix. It's a fucking handy bit of kit. And yeah, so that's all on the and then on the, yeah, that's all on the group. And then I think so I didn't even put any a limiter on this. I thought didn't think it needed it. So yeah, that's how so the the drums were there. I made the drums. I'm always making drums. Drums are the thing I do the most. I sit there and just make like drum loop after drum loop after drum loop. And then the Goldie voice came next, and then these chords were the next part of the tune. And then I had to try and work out a bass line that I could play with it.
Rock and roll is dead, and the idea of a DJ playing music that he was a part of is the one. It was something so fucking special. A lot of people couldn't get their heads around it, they couldn't understand it. It was the wild style of our lives, man. The heartbeat that we all believed in. Raving hard in the 90s was about losing your fucking car keys, trying to work out where your car was with no top on in the middle of a muddy field. That was raving hard. So many of us did, so many ways. We lost ourselves and the family.
So the next thing I did was to write some bass, basically. I always use Serum, generally use Serum for sub, just because it's fucking, I sidechained I was banging on earlier about the not using Shaper Box to, you know, for sidechain. But when breakbeats, when I find when you've got a kick drum that isn't, you know, 4/4, I find that sometimes you know, when you're doing the pump of 4/4, it doesn't always quite work. So I've used Track Spacer on this and sent it to this kick up here, FG1, I think, silenced, and then that just basically, when the kick happens, it just ducks the bass out just a little bit, so the kick's got room to. Again, I'm fucking a layman, really. So it just pumps a little bit. I haven't gone too crazy because, you know, the kick's got, they're different frequency ranges, so it's not too bad, but there's definitely some clash there. So that the Track Spacer just helps to give it that pump. And then I've put Pro C on there, Fab Filter Pro C. Pretty much, I haven't done a great deal, to be honest. Just put the threshold, left the threshold down, and then just fucked about a little bit of attack, a bit more release. And then the top bass is Pigments, which is fucking, as I was saying earlier, is just an absolute belter of a synthesizer, I think. So yeah. So you can fuck about with the timing here. Although it's being a bit synth, here we go. So what I've done with this here is I've played with the LFO amount, so you can see it switches to from 3/16 to 1/6, so it just gives a slightly different rhythm. So it just picks it up a little bit, so it's 1 1 1 and then bip 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 bip. So it's always triplet, but it's slightly, just so it's a little bit of variation rather than just having 316, all the sine wave going 316 basically. Again, I don't know all the technical terms. I just know I kind of know what I'm doing. So yeah, this basically, so I got the sub, I played the keys. It's pretty fucking straightforward riff, to be honest. It's nothing like out of the ordinary or groundbreaking, but it does a trick. Sounds fucking good. I track spacer. I didn't bother with track spacer. There's no input. I think I could probably delete that actually. Ta-da. I just put low cut just around 100k, like full drop off, so that it doesn't clash with the sub, but it still sits. So you've still got a little bit of girth. So there's a little bit of girth there, but it doesn't clash with the sub frequency wise, and they sit nice and tight together. Bit of wide on. I don't know why I actually haven't put any. I can delete that as well. Amazing. Now I've turned the filter on and off occasionally, just Pro C2 on this one, because then what I've done on the main bass group is the Neutron 4 compressor, which I really like, which has just done a little bit of sort of fanning around, and then to get Goldie's vocal coming out in the break, you can hear it because it all goes a bit fucking mad. If I solo Goldie's vocal here, again, I don't know if this is the right way to do things, but this is what worked for me. So
rock and roll is dead, and the idea of a DJ playing music that he was a part of is the one. It was something so fucking special. A lot of people couldn't get their heads around it. They couldn't understand it. It was the wild style of our lives, man. The heartbeat that we all believed in. Raving hard in the 90s was about losing your fucking car keys, trying to work out where your car was with no top on in the middle of a muddy field. That was raving hard. So many of us did. So many ways. We lost ourselves, the family.
So I basically put track spacer on the bass group, which is the warpy bass, top bass, and then the sub. So Goldie's vocal would cut through. You still can feel it and you get a bit of the bass, but Goldie's vocal was just getting a lot, because there's a lot going on, because what I've added in the for this break and then from then on, which is what makes it killer for me, is this another instance of Pigments, which has the same sort of processing on it. It's the same as this warpy bass, but it's up an octave and it's pushed back. I've pushed it back so that it does the opposite. So the sine waves are working in tandem, if you like, or they're sort of call and answering each other. So you can hear it as it builds up. Fucking cool. And then on this, when it drops, I've fucked about with the position on this engine 1 wavetable, and then I've also fucked about with the phase modulation, so that you get this like fucking nutty. And as the position of the wavetable and the phase modulation, as they sort of move with each other, you get this. It sort of change. It doesn't change. It changes every time it goes around. It sort of changes slightly. So it's like you can see it moving down here, look. And the wavetable amount there. And that's it basically. That's how I came up with the bass. I also, after the second drop, I just put a bit of pitch bend just going up, I think 3 semitones, was it? Yeah, 3. So just after the first, so you've got this bass line here, after the first drop is just straightforward, and then after the second drop you go. So on the longer notes it just pitch bends up, and yeah, that's it basically. So that's what happens. It's a nice little riff. You can hear it going whoa, 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 whoa. They're sort of fighting against each other in a good way. And that's how I did the bass. Basically, the way I make tunes, and probably everyone does this, or a lot of people do this, is I will get this loop. So once I've built this bit, and I've got it to where, I'll put it here actually, because that's where, once I've built that and I think I've got it nailed, I've got all the drums in the right place, I try and mix as I go to a certain degree. Obviously, it's not a final mix, but because I try and mix, this tune on the album is recorded, everything mixed entirely by me. Probably why it sounds terrible. But I try and get it into a solid loop where I've got everything, and then what I'll do with the chords and everything all play and make sure everything A-B's right, and I'll bring things in and out with solo and that. I don't use Clips View. I know a lot of people use it, but I learned how to make music on Pro Tools back in like 1998, 99, and then I switched to Ableton 4. When Ableton 4 came out, I think like 98, 99. I can't remember the exact time. And it didn't have if it did have the Clips View, it was very primitive at the time. So I've always just use Ableton in a kind of primitive way. And every time I go in the studio with someone that's uses Ableton, everyone, you always find out loads of stuff from each other, the little sneaky little tricks and stuff that you didn't know. But the Clips View is just something I've never ever got on board with for whatever reason. I'm sure it's fucking brilliant, but for me, it's just not the way I do it. So what I do is I'll make sure I get this loop solid, everything in there how I want it, and then I'll just literally copy and paste it about 5 minutes. So it's a whole massive block of everything in, and then piece by piece I'll solo, bring stuff in, bring stuff out, and then eventually, once I get a kind of idea in my head, I'll go, right, okay, so there's going to be 30 seconds of intro, then 30-second break, then there's going to be a minute of beats and blah 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 blah, then there's going to be 15 seconds of break, and I'll just basically chop out as I see fit, and then mute things until I get it in the right sort of space. So I'll just do it in sections with a tune like this. Sometimes when I was making music with my outboard gear and stuff, it would often be not so to the grid, if you know what I mean. But I also get, because I got ADHD, as you can probably see by my hands going everywhere and my rapid talking, I look like I've done gear basically, but I haven't, I promise you. We can't leave that in. But because I get a bit, I think my ADHD brain and the sort of mathematical way your brain some certain types of ADHD can work, I get a bit sort of fucking flustered if there's like too many weird out of grid things. So I end up generally just getting it back to the grid just because my brain that's the way it works. That's the way it likes it, and that's the way I sort of make music. So I'll make it into gridded, chop bits out, chop bits, do this, do that, and then eventually I'll have like a rough arrangement. And then I'll sort of, once I've got everything in place, then I'll see what else I can add and if it needs anything. I mean, there's not actually, when you look at it, I mean, if you took, obviously there's a lot of channels in the drum, there's a lot of tracks in the drums, but actually, if you really, if you look at it, there's only really 8 or 9, 10 tracks really, which is it's quite good. The simpler the better for me. I know this isn't the most simple record, but when you boil it down, it's drums, chord, plinky. I'll play you the plinky bit. That's just another pigments thing, 2 layers of pigments. I'll make sure there's a bit which is actually audible. So you've got this one going. So it's 2 layers. And again, just fucking with on this pigment, it's just fucking with I'm not gonna lie. It is a preset. It's 2 presets that I've fucked about with a bit, but I've generally just used. It's so handy with the presets on pigments because they come with these macros linked to various different, various LFOs and functions and whatnot. And a lot of the time, you don't actually need to do a lot to make something sound good. So with this, I'll just be fucking about with the time to make it macro 2, just to make it sort of do that kind of staggered, so the LFO will speed up and down basically. And this was just kind of an afterthought as a kind of melodic layer to the tune that I felt it was missing. So yeah, that's how this is how this bit came about. And it sort of, then after the break, again, I've done the same thing, just with the pitch bend, pitch curve, 3 semitones up, so it's just going up in the same way that the bass and the sub are. Once I'd sort of got the arrangement and made the basis of the track, I was like, right, okay, it needs a few extra bits, and this again is Pigment, just this funny little sound. This thing I fucking love. I don't know who, I can't remember, Aberrant, is it? Aberrant Sketch Cassette? It's a wicked bit of kit. It just makes things sound a bit shit. It's, in all honesty, and it basically just, you can, so if I play this noise, turn it off, see, it just gives it, you can have it in loads of different tape settings. Let me just loop it over a bit so it's easier to hear. There we go. So you can go bypass it there, and you can have cheap, you can make it, you can wear it out, you can play with the wow and flutter, you can saturate it, you can get weird little dropouts. It's a wicked little bit of kit. It's really easy to use, and it just makes things sound generally a bit shit. So I just felt like it needed something like that. I also, when I was listening to this tune, the inspiration for this tune was an old breaks tune called PMT Gyromancer. I was trying to sort of, recreate, not recreate in any way, but using this as a kind of inspiration. So they're in a similar kind of ballpark. Mine's obviously a lot more gnarly. And I also listened to, I was listening to Prodigy, Smack My Bitch Up. And with those, especially that era Prodigy, always had a crash on like the one every 2 bars or every 4 bars. So I wanted to work with the drums. It was an afterthought, but it felt like it needed it, was this crash here. So if I solo the drum group and I solo the crash, I'll loop it a bit further, actually. Sorry, apologies. Just adds that bit of girth to so every 2 bars I put the crash, basically. And then I also felt like it needed some kind of drum fills just to give it a bit of depth and to sort of make transitions easier. And, well, basically just to add a bit of trickery to it. So these are the fills. They are literally, I actually think I cheated and I went on Splice and I got some drum samples. But on these I used thermal, which is another output thing, which is similar to that thing I showed you earlier. But you just... It just adds a bit of like weirdness and a bit of madness to the tune. And then this one here, similar thing, just with thermal on it. So let's loop that. But then on the actual main drum fill group, I've got Brow Emotion, which is an auto panner type thing. I've also used Soothe, which is, it's a cheat, but it's a fucking great cheat. So you can basically, if you've got like, especially with the high end, like harsher frequencies, if you can't be bothered to sit there and dynamic EQ and like try and do it yourself, Soothe, because these were an afterthought, these drum fills, because they were a bit of an afterthought and they were like kind of, well, I need to flesh this out and get some good transitions going, I basically just stuck Soothe on it. If you hear it without it, it's just that tiny bit too harsh. So Soothe just brings it down, and there's a bit of width on it, a bit of wider, and black box again. Again, I didn't really feel the need. And again, this is probably wrong, or not how you should do it. But if I don't need to EQ something, then I won't. Now, DJ Crust, who's a famous Bristol drum and bass producer, he doesn't use compression or EQ. He doesn't compress anything, and he rarely uses EQs unless he absolutely has to, because he thinks if I can get the sounds to fit from whatever, then I'll do it that way. Now I know that's an avant-garde way of doing it, and I do EQ a lot of things, but if I can get away with it, then I won't. And for these, I don't think I needed to. I just used Soothe and fucked about with a few things and got it sitting in there nice. And then the other thing, really, to flesh it out, was just this Goldie Vox effect, which is basically just his voice. I don't even know. Do you know what? I couldn't even tell you what he's saying. So let's turn Portal and Effectrix off.
Raving hard in the 90s, 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 raving hard in the 90s.
Effectrix is wicked for these little stuttery things, and you can, if I sat there and fannied about and got it into position, but you can just do this chaos button and it will just do it for you, and it'll just make, every time you hit it, it'll do a different sort of it'll change all of this and make it all sound weird, and it'll change the timings of the X loop, the loop, scratch loop, reverse, so it just does little things, and it just EQ'd the low end out of it, made sure it's mono, and then that just adds a layer of, you can't really hear it, but it's just, I like to always have a bit of atmosphere in my tracks as well, and I've added a record crackle all the way through, just to make it sound a bit old and a bit shit, and that, I'm pretty sure, is that. So on the master, with this tune especially, I basically, I did what I did to it. I made the tune as it is, and then I stuck an IM pusher on it just to, you know, see what it would be like in the club. And if you hear it without, for example, put it here, and then if you add IM pusher, and what I've done, because it's only on clip mode for so you can have it on limiter or clip mode, and so I just leave it on clip mode most of the time, especially, and so when I sent it off to be mastered, I just turn the clip down basically. But you can, with the IM pusher, it's, as I said earlier, you find the key of tracks in, the key's in D, the key of the track is in D, so you can basically massively enhance the low end. So if I pump it, what you need is a signal coming through in yellow on this input thing here. It needs to come through in yellow. That's the optimum input signal. And then you can fucking give it some proper beans. And then if you then, see, look at the difference it makes. It's a fucking amazing bit of kit. And then if I take this out, look at it. Amazing. Oh, what the fuck's that? There you go. So that's without the sub enhancement. And it just brings the low. Again with the high. Stick it on and bang, Bob's your uncle. And the body as well. Body just kind of plays as just brings it back. So it brings the mid-range over to this way. I love it. I stick it on everything I do, every edit I do of old tunes, especially recorded tracks on vinyl. You just stick this on, you work out what the key the track's in, then you can just bring, because a lot of those old tunes have got like no sub, or the kick drums are really weak. But with this thing, you can make old tunes sound brand new in minutes, and it's a revelation. And is it a cheat? Is it a cop out? Fuck knows, but it works for me, and it makes this record sound from, you know, a fairly all right record into an absolute beast. So there you go.